Imagine walking into your boss's office, right? And asking for permission to work 5.2 full-time jobs simultaneously.
Yeah, good luck with that one.
I mean, it completely breaks the laws of physics and time. But according to a massive new local data drop we're looking at today, that impossible math is exactly what it takes for a median wage earner to just afford a standard home in Eagle County.
It's wild.
So, welcome to today's deep dive. It is Sunday, May 31st, 2026, and we are looking at a stack of sources that tell, well, a really intense story about how these massive high-stakes national fault lines are cracking the foundation of the hyperlocal realities right in our own backyards.
Yeah, it's all connected.
Exactly. So we're going to synthesize the national security landscape, shifting macroeconomic trends hitting the Colorado State Ledger, that staggering $650,000 local housing gap, and finally, your essential weekend logistics and sports escapes.
But before we jump into the mechanics of all that, we do need to make a quick note for you listening. The sources on the table today contain some extremely intense and, frankly, politically charged national developments.
Right.
So we are impartially conveying these facts exactly as they appear in the source material. We are taking no sides, endorsing no viewpoints, and we're acting entirely as a neutral guide to the information.
Perfect. So starting at the absolute widest lens, the national news cycle right now feels relentless. It's like trying to drink from a fire hose while standing on a fault line.
That is a very accurate description.
Yeah, there is an incredibly high level of volatility across multiple fronts, starting with domestic security. The sources confirm that Cole Thomas Allen, a resident of Torrance, California, has been formally charged with the attempted assassination of President Trump.
Right, at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Yeah. I mean, how does something like that impact the national mood?
Well, the psychological mechanism at play here is profound. When the physical security of a sitting president is breached at a high-profile event like that, heavily guarded, it instantly shatters the baseline assumption of institutional stability.
It puts everyone on edge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The public consciousness immediately shifts into this heightened state of vulnerability. And that anxiety bleeds into how the public interprets literally every other piece of news.
And there's plenty of other news to be anxious about, especially internationally. So President Trump has issued a direct shoot and kill order to the U.S. Navy.
Yeah, this is a massive development.
It is. It's targeted at any Iranian vessels attempting to lay mines or block the Strait of Hormuz. And look, I understand the strait is important, but a blanket shoot and kill order feels like a huge escalation.
Oh, it absolutely is. It bypasses the entire traditional military escalation ladder.
Right, because normally there are steps.
Yeah. Under normal rules of engagement, naval commanders use a very strict protocol. Radio warnings, warning shots across the bow, maybe active blockades before resorting to lethal force.
So they don't just start shooting.
No, because those steps are designed to prevent a misunderstanding from starting an actual war. A preemptive shoot and kill order removes that buffer completely.
Wow.
And the location is the critical mechanism here. I mean, the Strait of Hormuz is a 21-mile-wide maritime choke point.
That's where all the oil goes through, right?
Roughly 20% of the world's liquid oil supply passes through there. If a kinetic conflict kicks off and a vessel sinks, blocking that channel,
the global energy market just stops.
Immediate cardiac arrest.
Man. And meanwhile, back domestically, the policy landscape is going through its own massive overhaul.
Yeah, the health policy shifts are huge.
The Trump administration has just directed the CDC to align with a new assessment that calls for significantly fewer childhood vaccines. They're looking to drop the recommended schedule from 17 down to 11.
Which is a fundamental rewiring of the federal public health infrastructure.
How so? Like, practically speaking.
Well, the CDC's pediatric schedule isn't just a suggestion, right? It's the mechanical gear that turns the entire system. It dictates what insurance companies must cover without a copay.
Oh, right.
It sets the baseline for public school admission requirements across all 50 states, and it drives the research and development pipelines for major pharmaceutical companies.
So it's not just a medical change, it's an economic one.
Exactly. Removing 6 vaccines from that schedule alters the economics of pediatric medicine and shifts the burden of disease management entirely.
That is wild. And on top of these massive structural changes, the political infighting we are seeing in the sources is almost surreal.
It's definitely heating up.
Right. So the president is preparing to kick off the Freedom 250, that's the Great American State Fair, on June 24th, and is reportedly looking at canceling musicians who have backed out. But the real friction is internal. Representative Lauren Boebert is actively pushing the president to keep his promises regarding the release of the Epstein files. And apparently this is putting her directly in his crosshairs.
Yeah, so what we are watching here is a populist base utilizing its own accountability mechanisms against its leadership.
Meaning they're using his own talking points against him.
Basically.
Yeah.
The Epstein files represent a highly volatile anti-establishment demand for total transparency. When a representative like Boebert leverages that specific issue against the administration, it forces a fracturing within the party ranks.
It's like pitting the demand for disruption against the reality of governing.
Exactly.
And that fracturing extends to the DOJ. So lead prosecutor Matthew Petracca has left the case that accuses former FBI Director James Comey of threatening the president.
And the details of this are so...
Unbelievable. The alleged threat was a photograph of seashells arranged to read 8647. When I read that, I honestly didn't know how to process it. I mean, we've got an assassination attempt, global military gambles, a total overhaul of the pediatric vaccine schedule, and then seashells.
Yeah, a lot to take in.
What does this historically do to our attention bandwidth, like as a public?
It induces a state of chronic cognitive fatigue. The human brain is evolutionarily designed to evaluate threats one at a time.
Right, not 50 at once.
Exactly. When it is bombarded with existential geopolitical risks right alongside bizarre, highly abstract political drama, the brain loses its ability to prioritize.
So we just shut down.
Historically, yes.
Yeah.
When information velocity outpaces the public's ability to synthesize it, you see collective paralysis. People either completely disengage because the mental cost is too high, or they hyperfixate on one single bizarre detail like the seashells.
Because it's easier to process than a naval conflict in the Middle East?
Right.
Chronic cognitive fatigue makes perfect sense. But the reality is we don't really get the luxury of totally disengaging, because those massive national and global pressures eventually filter down into the macroeconomic realities right here in Colorado.
They always do.
And the state ledger is feeling the heat right now.
Yeah, the primary mechanism of that heat is the state budget, which, operates entirely differently than the federal budget.
How so?
Well, Colorado is currently being forced to overhaul its Medicaid and SNAP budgets. That's the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. They are doing this because the healthcare costs for the migrant population have hit an unplanned $105 million.
Let's walk through the mechanics of that. Why does an unexpected cost in one sector mean immediate cuts to healthcare and food assistance for residents?
Because state governments, unlike the federal government, cannot print money or run a deficit to cover unexpected expenses. By law, the Colorado budget must balance.
Oh, so it's a strict zero-sum game.
Exactly. It is a strict zero-sum equation. When a sudden $105 million liability appears on the ledger, the state has to find that exact amount of money in existing programs.
And Medicaid and SNAP are the biggest targets.
Though, they are typically the largest pools of discretionary state funding, making them the most vulnerable. So a global migration pattern creates a localized fiscal shock.
Which mechanically results in a reduction of the social safety net for the poorest residents of the state.
Exactly.
And that economic squeezing is happening in the private sector, too. Vail Resorts is reporting a 25% collapse in Rocky Mountain skier visits.
Which is a huge number.
But wait, let me push back on this for a second. We just had a brutally weird, late-arriving winter. How do we know this isn't just skiers staying home because the snowpack was terrible, rather than some broader macroeconomic collapse?
Well, the snowpack is absolutely a factor, but the scale of the drop is the tell here.
A 25% drop is that unusual?
Yeah, it outpaces the statistical variance of just a bad weather year. What we are actually looking at is the convergence of weather and macroeconomic anxiety.
So people are just tightening their belts.
Right. When inflation is high and consumer confidence is rattled by the kind of national instability we just discussed, the very first thing families cut from their budget is luxury discretionary spending.
And a ski trip is the ultimate luxury.
Exactly. A 5-day ski vacation with $1,000 walk-up lift tickets and inflated resort dining, that's the first thing to go. The mechanism here is consumer belt tightening, and tip-reliant resort towns are the frontline casualties when the middle class decides to stay home.
Which transitions us perfectly into our deepest dive today, because when luxury tourism drops, the local workforce loses their financial safety net right at the exact moment their cost of living is peaking.
Yeah, the housing data is brutal.
We are looking at the 2025 Eagle County Regional Housing Needs Assessment, and the numbers are just staggering. The median non-resort home price in Eagle County has hit $1,055,000.
Unbelievable.
And for a two-person household earning 100% of the area median income, there is a $650,000 gap between what they can afford and that median home.
To really grasp the severity of this, we need to define what area median income, or AMI, practically means for people.
Walk us through it.
If you lined up every single paycheck in Eagle County, from the absolute lowest to the absolute highest, the AMI is the person standing dead center in that line. That person represents the mathematical core of the working middle class.
Right.
Yet, according to this data, the dead center of the workforce is locked out of the housing market by well over $500,000.
And the report breaks this down into job equivalents, which is where it truly breaks the brain. When you look at affordability through the lens of wages, a household needs between 3.7 and 7.5 full-time jobs paying the median wage, which is $52,900, just to afford that median price home.
It's absurd.
Countywide, the average is 5.2 jobs. It's like playing a game of Monopoly, where the bank doubles property prices every time you circle the board, but your $200 for pass and go never changes.
That's a really good way to put it.
I mean, you aren't losing because you're bad at the game. You're losing because the underlying math is fundamentally broken. It's like running a marathon in a weighted vest.
And that analogy really highlights the detachment between capital and labor here. The housing market in Eagle County has effectively decoupled from the local economy entirely.
Because it's not based on local wages anymore.
No, the prices are no longer dictated by what a local worker can borrow. They are dictated by what out-of-state equity can pay in cash.
And there is no quote-unquote starter option to escape the math either. 39% of all households in Eagle County are currently cost-burdened, meaning they're spending more than 30% of their gross income just on keeping a roof over their heads.
Right there, trapped.
Yeah. Even condominiums, which are historically the entry-level stepping stone, require an income of 190% of the area median income.
The downstream effects of this are just crippling the local commercial ecosystem. According to the assessment, 75% of local employers are reporting significant negative impacts.
Specifically citing high turnover, right?
High turnover and intense friction over wage rates.
Let's dig into that friction for a second. Why are employers so upset about wage rates when they know their employees are facing a $650,000 housing gap?
Because it triggers a localized wage price spiral that destroys profit margins.
Okay, how does that work?
If a local business wants to retain an employee, they have to pay a wage that somewhat bridges that massive housing gap, right?
Right.
So the business raises wages.
Makes sense.
But to afford that higher payroll, the business must raise the prices of their goods and services. A hamburger suddenly costs $30.
Right, and then no one buys it.
It's exactly.
Yeah.
At $30, the local residents can no longer afford to eat there, so revenue drops. The business is caught in a trap where they cannot afford to pay the wages required for their employees to live, but they also cannot afford to charge the prices required to survive.
Man. And the data gives us a quantifiable measurement of how this spiral is actively displacing the community. Avon has a real estate transfer tax, or AETT, which gives an exemption to local buyers.
Yeah, if you live there, you don't pay it.
Right. If you are an Eagle County resident making the house your primary residence, you don't pay the tax. Well, in 2017 and 2018, 35% of home sales in Avon received that local exemption. By 2023, that number had plummeted to just 7%.
Which is just a staggering drop. The mechanism of that drop is the transition of housing from a shelter market to a global commodities market.
What does that mean for the buyer?
When 93% of buyers in a town are willing to pay a transfer tax because it's simply a rounding error on an investment property or a third home, it means the local wage earner is competing against global hedge funds and liquid wealth.
Which they can't do.
No, it's an unwinnable financial contest for someone earning a median salary.
So wait, if 75% of businesses are suffocating and the number of local buyers has been effectively eradicated down to 7%, at what point do we stop calling this a housing crisis?
That's a fair question.
I mean, a crisis implies a temporary market imbalance. Doesn't this data prove we have crossed the threshold into the active erasure of the community, like an existential community crisis?
Yes. The terminology really matters here. A housing crisis can be mitigated with zoning changes or, interest rate adjustments. What the Avon RETT data shows is systemic geographic displacement.
The people who run the town are leaving.
Exactly. The core engine of the municipal infrastructure, the teachers, the public works employees, the nurses, they are being mathematically zoned out of their own zip codes.
With the weight of this massive economic displacement and, honestly, the chronic fatigue of the national news cycle we talked about, escaping into nature isn't just a luxury anymore. It's a psychological necessity.
Absolutely.
But as of today, accessing those natural escapes requires a pretty intense level of logistical maneuvering. Let's pivot to your Sunday logistics and sports updates.
Yeah, finding peace and quiet now requires navigating a heavily engineered infrastructure matrix.
It really does, because starting today, Sunday, May 31, parking at the Booth Lake Trailhead in East Vale is completely closed.
Oh, wow. Completely.
Completely. And this isn't a temporary weekend thing. It is closed through the fall, and the enforcement is severe. There is absolutely no parking allowed in the surrounding neighborhood, and you can't park at Booth Creek Park, and the Vale Mountain School lot is strictly off limits.
So what happens if you park there?
If you violate this, your car will be towed instantly.
Wow. But, the town isn't doing this to be punitive. It's actually a public safety mechanism.
Awesome.
Well, when you have hundreds of cars parallel parked along narrow mountain neighborhood roads, it creates a physical barricade. In the event of a medical emergency or a sudden wildfire, a Type 1 fire engine physically cannot navigate the road to evacuate residents or stop the blaze.
Oh, that makes total sense.
Right. By eliminating the parking entirely, the town is basically engineering a forced behavioral change to mitigate catastrophic risk.
I get the safety aspect, I totally do. But there is a deep, frustrating irony here. You're trying to go to the woods to escape the rigid structure of modern stress, and you end up getting your car towed because you didn't perfectly execute a multimodal transit plan.
Yeah, it's definitely a hassle.
So how are you actually supposed to get to the trail now?
You have to utilize the infrastructure the town has deployed to replace the parking. You can do a hiker drop-off, but the primary mechanism is the free East Vale bus route.
Are they running often?
Yeah, they are operating on a spring schedule right now, with early runs at 6 and 7 a.m., followed by half-hourly service all the way until 6 p.m. Alternatively, you can use the Shift Bike e-bike program, which actually has a docking station right at the trailhead.
That's pretty cool, but it's a massive shift in how we view the outdoors.
Exactly. We are transitioning to a model where trail access is treated with the same logistical rigor as a major city subway system.
Right.
The infrastructure has to be public, shared, and highly scheduled because the volume of users simply exceeds the physical capacity of the landscape.
It's adapt or stay home, I guess. Let's shift gears to sports, where there were some brutal outcomes this weekend.
Oh, man, yeah.
The Colorado Avalanche's season came to a crashing halt. They were swept by the Vegas Golden Knights in the Western Conference Final.
Tough to watch.
Just a devastating end to a season that had incredible momentum. But on a much more positive note for the diehards out there, Arapahoe Basin is keeping the dream alive.
Oh.
They received 14 inches of late snow and have officially extended their ski season all the way to May 10th, even though, get this, only 7% of their runs are actually open.
Operating a massive resort infrastructure for just 7% of the mountain seems financially counterintuitive, honestly.
Right. Why do it?
But the mechanism here is cultural capital. A basin's entire brand identity is built on being the first to open and the last to close.
Ah, it's a pride thing.
Exactly. Extending the season for a fraction of the mountain secures deep generational loyalty from their core pass holders. It's an investment in the mountain's lore.
A few other quick hits to round out your Sunday. The Denver Broncos have formalized an agreement to purchase Burnham Yard in Denver.
That's a huge deal for the new stadium.
Massive real estate move that officially secures the footprint for their new stadium project, yeah. We also finally have the USMNT 2026 World Cup roster, which was just announced by manager Mauricio Pochettino in New York.
The tactical buildup for a World Cup hosted on home soil is going to absolutely dominate the sports cycle for the next month.
Oh, totally. And on the local stage, a massive shout out to 8th grader Emily Green.
Oh, yeah, the gymnast.
Yes, she put on an absolute clinic by scoring a perfect 10 at regional gymnastics. Also, for the endurance athletes, get ready for the GoPro Mountain Games, which are introducing a brutal new 20K climb up to Midvale this year.
That sounds exhausting just thinking about it.
Doesn't it? And unfortunately, we have to end our sports coverage on a solemn note. The hockey world is mourning the passing of Claude Lemieux, the four-time Stanley Cup champion who died at age 60.
Such a loss.
He was a fiercely physical player who left a permanent mark on the game, especially during his time with the Avalanche.
Yeah, he fundamentally changed the physical dynamic of playoff hockey in the 1990s. He will be deeply missed.
So we have unpacked the global security gambles, the state budget math, the trailhead logistics, and the sports world. But I want to pull all of this back to the most critical data point we discussed today.
The housing gap.
Right. If the local workforce in Eagle County is mathematically priced out by a $650,000 gap, and you need 5.2 jobs just to buy a house, we know the workers are leaving.
They have to.
But here is the provocative question to leave you with. What actually replaces them? If humans simply cannot afford to live within a 50-mile radius to do the necessary jobs, does a place like Eagle County become the world's first fully automated resort town?
Just run entirely by robotics and AI.
Right. Or do we regress to a 19th century company town model where massive hospitality corporations buy up real estate to build private dormitories, meaning your employer also becomes your landlord?
The economic math suggests one of those two futures is inevitably coming. Once the organic community is fully displaced, the void has to be filled by either technology or corporate indentured housing.
It is a heavy thought, but an absolutely necessary one to consider the next time you are scanning your bus pass or watching the housing market. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. Keep questioning the math behind the headlines, stay curious, and we will see you next time.